Welcome to History Today, Episode 8, Little Known Facts About Joliet.
The new year is here. It's January 2026. My motto for the year, or at least for the first couple months of the new year, is keep it simple. My first podcast of the year focuses on bits and pieces of Joliet history. So let's dive right in. Let's talk about the Joliet newspapers. The current newspaper is the Joliet Herald News. The first newspaper in Joliet was the Joliet Courier in 1839. It was located on the first main street in Joliet, Bluff Street. There was the Joliet Signal, the True Democrat, the Joliet Republican, the Joliet Record, the Joliet Sun, the Joliet News, the Joliet Evening Herald, which led to the Joliet Herald News. There were various papers printed in various languages at various times, depending on ethnicity. There was a German newspaper and a Slovenian newspaper, for instance. There was a predominantly African-American newspaper called The Voice from 1956 to 1969, and the current weekly newspaper, Joliet Times Weekly. Where was the first main street in Joliet, you ask? That was Bluff Street, where Billy Leemacher Bicentennial Park, or simply Bicentennial Park, is now located. At that street was the first hotel, the first bank, the first newspaper, the first fire station, the first brewery, the first theater, and the first drugstore. I think it would have been something similar to a modern Walgreens. And while we are talking about drugstores, that first drugstore was where the first few meetings of the Will County Board were when Joliet first became the county seat of Will County, even before the first courthouse was built. It was called the Old Wilson Store. Alrighty then. Joliet was made the county seat of Will County January 12, 1836. At the time, it was known as Joliet. The first courthouse was located near the intersection of Scott and Jefferson Street. It was completed in 1837. Since then, we have had 3 other courthouses in different blocks on Jefferson Street, and the one that we now have on Jefferson and Ottawa Street. Who was the first mayor of Joliet? Joliet became a city in 1852. The first mayor was Cornelius Covenhoven Van Horn. He was a lawyer and a farmer. Louis Joliet and Father Pierre Marquette are thought to be the first white men in the area. They camped on a hill overlooking the Des Plaines River. This used to be a really huge hill. People visited the hill on all-day picnic excursions. It is currently marked with a historical marker. The location is on the east side of South Larkin Avenue near Route 6. If you travel at the speed limit, you will miss it. I believe it is hidden by some trees. In its glory days, it was much, much taller than it is now. It became a quarry for clay. Much of its clay was taken for tile. The account of the first permanent white settlers was written in a history by W.R. Rice. He apparently reached Hickory Creek in 1829 near what is now 4th Avenue. A Mr. Brown and a Mr. Sawyer were already living in that area. But the history is not specific to how long they had been there. In 1831, Robert Stevens and David Maggard staked claims in the area. Stevens settled where Washington Street is now. Maggard began farming on the opposite side of the river, and this is where it gets a little confusing. In 1833, Charles Reed built a cabin on the south bank of the river near where the Jefferson Street Bridge is. He built a dam and started a mill for grinding grain. Unfortunately, James McKee staked a prior claim to Reed's land. McKee apparently filed his claim in 1820. He had divided it into lots and was selling land to pioneers.
Check out these new and exciting programs coming soon to the Joliet Public Library. Senior Care and Bingo with Healthcare Plus. Stop by our Ottawa Street branch on Wednesday, January 14th from 11 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. and join Tricia Alvis for an informative session and questionnaire about the services offered to senior citizens by Healthcare Plus. After the session, make sure to stick around for a rousing game of bingo. This event is for senior citizens age 60 and above. Paint and Wellness Class. Join Ashley Searing from Rejuvenate Plant and Wellness at our Ottawa Street branch on Wednesday, January 21st from 6:30 to 8 p.m. to paint your own planter in this class that blends art and nature to support self-care. This event is for adults only. Registration is required. Crochet 101. Make a bookmark. Make a cute bookmark at our Ottawa Street branch on Wednesday, January 28th from 6:30 to 8:30 p.m. in this beginner crochet class. All materials will be provided. This event is for adults only. Registration is required. Creativity Connections. Catholic Charities sponsors this creative new program at our Ottawa Street branch on Friday, February 13th from 1 to 3 p.m. Learn new skills and make new friends through the joy of creating. This event is for adults only. Registration is required.
In 1835, McKee's claim was bought by Martin Demond. He divided the town into lots. The borders were Broadway, Exchange, which is now Jefferson Street, Cross Street, which is now Western Avenue, and the Des Plaines River. In 1834, James Campbell purchased several pieces of land opposite McKee's claim, and he named his land Joliet after his daughter. The boundaries of his claim were Washington, Benton, Des Plaines, and Scott Street. Demond's claim took the name of West Joliet. It grew more rapidly than East Joliet. So you can see where the time-honored tradition of East versus West began. Joliet was a major railway hub, even back in the 1890s. At one time, there were 4 railroads that converged in the Joliet area. All these trains needed tracks, and the tracks made it dangerous for horses and walking in the area. So the tracks were raised and a new depot for all the train lines was built. Hence we have Union Station, which was finished in 1912. The shore of the canal through Joliet was nothing like it is now when it was just a natural river. Parts of it were about 2 feet deep. People could take the train to Joliet, and then they would take a ferry from one side of the river to the other to get to the National Hotel. At one point in time, there was so much available in Joliet that residents of Chicago would visit here by train to shop, attend the theater, eat out, and buy and sell products. Nothing was more important to the growth of a young city of Joliet than the coming of the railroads. In the early days, a round trip to Chicago by stagecoach could take 3 days. The 40-mile stage rides were hot and dusty in the summer and cold in the winter. Filled with all kinds of delays along the trip, the rides were uncomfortable no matter what was blowing in the air. When the I&M Canal was completed, picket boats cut the trip to Chicago in half the time of a stagecoach. The boats were safe, but still slow. In 1852, the Chicago and Rock Island opened a rail line between Joliet and Chicago. A man could ride to Chicago, conduct business, and return on the same day. But while the railroad traffic boomed in the 1850s, the plank roads died. In 1849, the legislature had approved plank roads. The need was obvious because dirt roads became wet and muddy in bad weather. The first plank road here linked Joliet and Plainfield along what became US 30. It was considered an innovative concept when the plank road opened on December 1st, 1851. The plank road, with long wooden rails 6 feet apart, had 8-foot planks in between that were 3 inches thick. For a small fee, a horse and wagon can move smoothly through nasty weather. But the plank road was expensive to repair. In good weather, people avoided the plank road and rode beside it. In bad weather, they sometimes just ran through the toll gates without paying. Although several plans were made for more plank roads in Joliet, the business proved to be unsuccessful, as the railroads took on important transportation roles. With the beginning of the Civil War, the plank roads disappeared. Local manufacturing, the Economy Motor Car Buggy Company in Joliet, began producing the Model E in 1909, indicating local auto manufacturing was happening then. Early road tests. In 1914, a Dayton cycle car traveled from Chicago to Joliet in just over an hour and a half, showcasing early automobile performance and use in the area. The Dayton Automobile Company also briefly produced cars in Joliet around 1914, followed by Commonwealth Motor Company from 1917 to 1922, which built sturdy vehicles and later made checker cabs, establishing Joliet as an auto hub. Thank you for tuning in today, and we hope to have your ear for the next podcast next month.
If you have any questions or concerns about the content of this podcast, please call Anneta Drilling, local history librarian, at 815-846-3112, or email her at adrilling@jolietlibrary.org. I'm Patrick Maloney, and I'll see you next time when history repeats itself.